Before I started nursing school, my number one question was, what is it like and how can I prepare? I kept hearing a lot of the same things, which is rewarding, fulfilling, hardest thing I've ever done. Barely had time to eat. And honestly, it really didn't give me the insight I needed to prepare myself for nursing school. But I'm about to give you the inside scoop on what nursing school is really like and how you can prepare your life to genuinely succeed and enjoy nursing school. Starting with step one, prioritize yourself, or you'll wind up like me the day before I started my nursing classes. Y'all, I'm getting ready to go to this orientation, but I stopped by my parents' house to use my nebulizer because, as you can hear, my voice is gone. This weekend, I done threw up. I done been whole, all over body aches, fever. Like, then my baby had the fever. My husband was sick. It just was not fun. Please, please, please get into the habit of prioritizing things in the order that they're most important, and they're most important starting with you. You cannot accomplish any task pouring from an empty cup. And my biggest downfall my first week of nursing school was trying to put school first. You hear a lot of worker bee, toxic hustle mentality. Doesn't really help us really understand how to enjoy things that we are pursuing. I know that we're chasing a degree. I know that we're getting to the bag, but at the end of the day, you cannot do that if you have not taken care of yourself first. Now, I want to stress prioritizing yourself because a lot of the other tips I talk about will kind of fall under and intertwine with prioritizing yourself, and I detail this a lot on my website, including my new digital product that I'm so excited to launch. It's called the Nursing Student Survival Guide. It will detail everything you need in depth for what to expect when starting nursing school, tools you'll need, equipment you'll need, the mindset you need, and study habits so that you can be fully prepared for the ways in which nursing school will challenge and test you. Now, going on to the next step, make sure that you are not acting from a place of negative anxiety. Now, I want to stress negative anxiety because we all have anxiety, and to a certain degree anxiety is good. Negative anxiety deals with negative thought processes, negative self-talk. It has a negative conversation and rhetoric around it. And so when going into the nursing program, the first thing you want to make sure you're nipping in the bud is that you're not coming from a place of negative anxiety. Negative anxiety for me a lot of times shows up when studying for tests. So the way that my school sets it up is you have to have an 80% average on your test scores to pass the class. You can otherwise be doing your homework, be showing up on time, show up to your clinicals, but if you're not passing your test, you don't pass the class. Not only that, the tests are so heavily weighed that our teachers have already told us if you're not passing these tests, they're not even going to try to add in your homework assignments because you cannot pass the class without passing the test. So I've noticed that when going into studying for these tests, negative anxiety shows up and it has to be managed, or it can really distract you from the goal, which is to essentially become a nurse by way of passing tests and by way of passing these classes. When I'm studying or when I go to study, obviously you have this drive and this energy to want to study. You want to learn the material, but negative anxiety would be like, but what if I don't pass? What if I don't learn the material? I'm not learning it fast enough. I'm not doing it fast enough. Things that are not necessarily true or are not a problem yet. Those are things that you have to manage because it will distract you and it will have you going into tests feeling less than what you are, thinking that you know less than what you do. I was able to pass all of my tests, but my first test I barely passed. And I realized quickly negative anxiety has to be curbed and managed. It really takes away from you enjoying the experience of just having the ability to pursue your dreams the way that you can. And so I had to really get rid of this negative cloud that was looming over me whenever I did or pursued my dreams. And so how did I do that, right? Well, there's two ways that I go about it. I try to, if possible, change it. Negative anxiety really roots itself in doubts, insecurities. And so I would take the time to say, you know what? let's change this thought process. If I'm spending so much energy being negative, I can spend the same amount of energy, if not more, being positive. I will say it takes a lot to identify and retrain your brain from that, but it really helped me to study as I progressed each test. Now, for the times that it was not just poof magic and I could just change one thought to another, I had to use it for good. I would kind of counteract it with logic and say, okay, if I'm anxious about this topic, is there something about this topic that I feel like I'm weak in? Is there something about this topic that I don't feel confident in? I will go back and study it. I will go back and read it. I will test myself on that specific area so that that negative anxiety has no room. And once I was able to use negative anxiety to build confidence, didn't fear it anymore. I didn't fear studying for tests. I didn't fear taking tests. And it really helped me to remain focused on my goal, which is essentially passing that NCLEX. Step 3 would be to understand how to study for you, okay? For you. There are going to be so many different pieces of advice you're going to get about how to study. One of the things that remain constant and that I want anybody going into the nursing program to keep in mind is that nursing exams are way different than any of your prerequisites for the most part, because a lot of the NCLEX style questions are situational. It's important that you learn the material in a way that you can personalize it. You want it to become a part of who you are as opposed to just a piece of information you're remembering, because if you do that, you may get into a test and the questions are able to throw you off. As much as nursing is just not just passing tests, you have to do that to become a nurse. So it's really important that you do what works for you despite what other people may say, because the results showed for me, and that's what matters. Don't feel like you need to go with the crowd, okay? Another thing I would like to say about studying for you is not boxing yourself in to a type of learning. Do not neglect to try other styles of learning so that you're able to pull from multiple different areas of remembrance. I know for me, going through my test, a lot of test questions I would get right were because I was able to actively listen and pay attention in class. Able to hold on to that information just from not boxing myself in and not coming into it saying, I'm not gonna remember it, I'm not gonna learn it. I'm not a visual person. You know, I like to utilize all of the senses that I have to learn. Step 4, you want to check your knowledge as much as you can. Okay, so checking yourself, keeping yourself in check, testing yourself is really important because it will tell you what you don't know. You want to test your knowledge often because you're going to come across in a test, in clinical, with patients, with your professor, with your peers, things that you need to know the answer to. The study methods that I use to check myself, one of which is the Feynman method. I absolutely love it because every time it's gonna tell me if I know what I know or I'm faking. It really makes you work your brain to take it from this big complex 4 and 5 syllable worded sentence to something that's really simple. If you can take something from complex to simple, you can go from simple to complex. And if you can do that, you know it. Another resource I use to check my knowledge is what my college has given me. The book that I use, Yoast, has questions at the end of the chapter that is specific to that chapter. The answers are elsewhere in the book. Anytime I read a chapter, I will go through, read the objectives and the answers to them, as well as answer those questions. And whatever I didn't get right or I didn't know, I'll read the rationale for it as well. The last thing I want to say about checking your knowledge is making sure you're getting into a productive study group. I have a productive study group of 3 other women who are absolutely amazing. Speaking to people, using the jargon, all those things are, to me, a more elevated way of checking your knowledge, because you can read it all day, you can regurgitate it all day, but when it's used in different contexts with different people from their point of view, and maybe they have questions about it, or maybe they want to talk about it in regards to another subject, maybe they want to compare 2 different things. Understanding people's different trains of thought with the information we're given, the material that we're given, really helps deepen our understanding. For me, it does. The last step I have for you is to learn the layout of the class and stay organized. Okay, learning the layout of the class is like the second most important thing to me, because It'll help you understand how to prioritize what you're about to do. So reading the syllabus, understanding how things are weighed, understanding what's going to be graded first, understanding what the teacher expects from you, kind of what their personal preferences are, will help you get an idea of how to kind of plan out your day so that you're, for one, prioritizing yourself, for two, have the time to do everything that we already listed, and for three, can stay organized. Understanding that about my class helped me to prioritize and stress less. When I would ask these questions before I started the nursing program of what's it like, and people would tell me fulfilling, rewarding, all these things, were they wrong? No, they weren't wrong. But there's so much that comes behind those words, and it makes a lot more sense once you start how fulfilling and rewarding it is to be in the process of, you know, becoming who you want to be, a nurse. With my experience in the nursing program, it's what you make it, just like anything else. And if you come in with a positive attitude, you'll make it, you'll be fine, you'll do it. And I think these tips will help you as well as anybody in the nursing program. All my nursing students, perspective in your clinical phase, whatever it is, good luck to all of us.